What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS stream for Friday at the Charles Schwab Challenge. Gonna go through what you need to know for props and for DFS to go out there and have a successful start to your weekend. For me today in DFS, it was a fantastic start. Over there for the prop side, Underdog, Prize Picks, slightly below break even, we'll say. I lost a little bit of units on the other side, but nothing all too tragic. So we're alive. We're on to round two. And like I said, I'm ready to go out there and crush it tomorrow. So hopefully everyone had a solid start to their week. As of right now, I think I'm in a decent standing in the GPP. I was in first place for quite some time, at least for 4 or 5 hours today. So that was nerve-wracking. I banned myself from looking at the standings. A few of our top plays like Spieth were a little bit rough. I'd say Morikawa, who I played this week, another rough round, but Data Golf gives those kind of players like a 50 to like 45% chance of making the cut. I think it's actually closer to like 60% for Spieth now to go out there and make the cut tomorrow. So that makes me feel a little bit better about how some of my guys have played. Of course, guys, there's 120 players, right? So you're not dealing with the usual 156. So it's going to be a little bit easier to get a 6 of 6 this week. So we'll go through all of that. We'll talk about some of the weather for tomorrow. But just first off, welcome on in. We've got Barry. We've got talkie lovers. Barry lover, the talkie lovers. I'm not a huge talkie guy, but all right. Saw you in first around 4 o'clock today. Yeah, it was for a good while there. So I felt pretty good about it. But of course, you're going to see a lot of movement. Still in pretty good standing, though. And Michael Block bounce back. Oh, I don't know if I can get behind that one. But yeah, I have to say, I called it, right? Figured he was going to shoot an 80, and he shot an 81. Actually surprised me there. But let's talk about this golf course, which today, I'd say for the first hour and a half, maybe even 2.5 hours of play, was gettable, right? There were guys getting after it early. There was like Smotherman made like 4 birdies out of his first 5 holes. You had guys down there like Putnam in the afternoon taking apart English up here towards the top. But for the first, I'd say like 2, maybe 2.5 hours of play, the scoring average was well under par. So for a lot of those morning guys to not be at the top, I mean, outside of a Harry Hall, is surprising to me, because when you split it by wave, you can see the morning had a quote unquote advantage out there, but it was really only for that first 2 hour stretch. So if you were somebody that was going off later in that morning wave, you really didn't even get to benefit it from all that much. And honestly, Harry Hall was like a middle of the wave kind of guy, actually a little bit towards the latter half of it. So surprising that there's not more guys from the AM wave up there, but you did see quite the difference between the two waves. A lot of that comes out to the greens firming up throughout the day, and that is just only going to be the case more so throughout the weekend. They've talked about wanting to firm this place up. They had the rules official on there talk about it because it's the last time they're doing an event before the renovation, and they can really, really dry out these greens because they're going to rip them up the next day. I think this place is going to get kind of difficult. I mean, it's already difficult today, right? Already played over par during the first round. It was easier than the scoring average we saw last year, but we had to remember it rained over the last 2 days, right? This was a soft, receptive course for that first 2.5 hour period. And it's not going to be anything remotely close to that throughout the weekend if the current forecast holds up, which is for no rain at this point. So just from a difficulty standpoint, expect this thing to ratchet up as the days go on there, both from the firmness of the greens and then the speed of the greens. They're going to try and make those a little bit quicker. When we're looking at the weather, I do have to say Friday it's not ideal, but it's pretty close to ideal like you saw today. In terms of, let's see, we have the HRRR model up here right now. They're calling for relatively low sustained winds throughout the day. A little bit gusty in the morning, a little bit gusty towards the afternoon there, but nothing that's going to be overly worrisome, right? You're talking about 13 mile an hour wind gusts, 14 mile an hour wind gusts for like maybe an hour and a half out there. In the afternoon, the same kind of thing for maybe your last hour and a half of play. I just, with the low, really easy conditions towards the middle of the day that are going to affect the latter half of the AM wave, and then of course the beginning half of the PM wave, I don't see a huge advantage between the two waves, perhaps except for the receptiveness of the greens in the morning, right? From the wind perspective, from the weather perspective, I think it's going to be pretty even across the board, but kind of like you saw today, right? It was a relatively even weather day, maybe slightly windier in the afternoon. There was that whole 0.6 shot difference between the two waves, right? One played under par, one played a little bit over 2/3 of a stroke over par. So maybe it's a little bit of a smaller difference tomorrow, but when you're playing a large field contest, when you're playing a bunch of players, a large player pool, that can make all the difference, right? Just 0.3, 0.4 strokes can lead to huge differences in your results for GPPs. So I'll be slightly playing the AM wave more. I think you'll see slightly more of these ceiling performances out there tomorrow. If you look at willyweather.com, they're actually calling for a slightly higher difference between the winds between morning and afternoon, with the afternoon being significantly more windy than the morning. You also have, what is it? AccuWeather was calling for the same thing. It's closer to like 10 miles an hour of sustained winds in the afternoon. So this HRR model, right, isn't calling for that much in the PM wave there. But I would look out for it a little bit, right? We go over here to this NAM model. You'll see that in the morning, they're calling for closer to like 10 to 12 mile an hour gusts. In the afternoon, they have it calming down and then ratcheting up just a little bit before sundown. So pretty similar between those two, I'd say. Let's look at a few others. All right, this one's more PM heavy, right, with the wind gusts. Let's see, this one's, more wind gusty across the board. And then this one here, right, same kind of thing, right? It's more PM wave wind gusts. So a lot of these just got updated in the last like half an hour or so. And what I'm seeing here is that it's looking like it's getting more and more difficult. So before we're going in and entering a ton of props later on, right, we're going to want to check back in on these forecasts and see what's going on. Because if it's going to be windy out there, this scoring average could balloon, right, to something like a whole stroke over par, that sort of thing, if not worse, if it really firms up quickly as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. Just even from the last update I was looking at on here in terms of the weather, it's changed. It's already gone a little bit more windy, particularly in some of these other models. Like this GFS model has gone particularly more windy. Let's see, this one, right, has gone really windy there towards the afternoon. We're going to have to keep an eye on that, right? None of these models are perfect, right? They're situationally better than others. That's why I choose to focus on the NAM and the HRRR model over there, but I'm no meteorologist, right? And I don't pretend to be one either. Let's bring up the player pool and start talking about some DFS together, shall we? So let's go ahead and share my screen. And I have to say, we're trying to look for pivots here in round 2 Showdown, right? If you're new here, you haven't played Showdown before, of course, this is just the single round version of DFS. And for round 2 Showdown, there's a relatively large edge in just fading some of the chalk, and it's predictable chalk. So in round 2, you're going to see a lot of people just centering around the guys that played well in round 1, right? And it's intuitive, right? You see somebody play well in round 1, they're quote unquote in form for the week, and you want to ride that hot hand. While in a few cases that can be an optimal strategy, it's very difficult to back up a low round. And with that inflated ownership comes a huge cost when it comes to the game theory perspective, right? You're giving up a lot of equity going after somebody that you're going to have to invest in so much heavier into to get that leverage. So for me in round 2 Showdown, it's about taking guys that maybe spun their wheels in round 1 or even had atrocious rounds. Because first off, if they had an atrocious round, they have to be aggressive in round 2 to go out there and make the cut. And if they spun their wheels, they're not going to get the attention they deserve. And, spinning your wheels, it's not great. It's not optimal by any means, but you're not really playing poor golf. You're at least hanging in there. So I'm talking about Victor Hovland, right? Kind of spun his wheels today. Somebody like a Tony Finau, a Jordan Spieth, for example. I don't think you want to be afraid to avoid those sort of players. Actually, I don't to play them, right? Don't feel like you have to avoid them because of their round 1 performance. They're going to come in at lower ownership. In some cases, they're going to come in at a lower price tag. I see that for a few players on this list. Like Cebu's a little bit cheaper, right? I'm not playing them for tomorrow, but there's values to be had in that perspective as well. So it's a little bit different than your 4-round contest. And I would say, if anything, you want to differentiate a little bit more, right? Golf is volatile enough over an entire event, over an entire 4-round sample size. It's extremely volatile when you just get it for an 18-hole sample size. So try to embrace that. Try to just go into it knowing that a lot of shit's going to hit the fan. And if you can avoid a 40% owned Scotty Scheffler, for example, you're going to most likely be better off than most. So we'll start up there, right? Scotty Scheffler, not in my player pool. The reason why he's not, I'd have to pretty much lock him to get that leverage, right? And in a single round sample size, I know that anything can happen, right? There's a chance that Scotty goes out there, shoots even par, even someone like 1, even 2 under par is not going to get it done in the large field contest, right? If you're trying to win first place in a relatively large GPP, right? A 2 under from Scotty at 11.6 is probably not what you're looking for, right? So I'd rather take the shot on some of the guys that spun their wheels, right? Down here in the $10,000 range. And I can pretty much play all of them because I'm not playing a Scotty, right? I can fit in 25% of a Hovland if he now there. I can fit in a 20%, maybe a 25% of a Jordan Spieth into my lineups easily. In fact, I could probably be a little bit more aggressive about some of those players I take just because I'm avoiding Scotty Scheffler. Now, I have him in my 4-round lineups. If he happens to go out there and smash, I'm going to be pretty happy about that because of where I'm at in the main slate. So it's a little bit of a self-hedge there, but he was 40% for the main slate. I have to think he has to be at least 40% tomorrow. And I know the pricing is a little bit of a bigger gap, where he's 11.6, right? He's a whole $1,100 more than the next player there, but still, I still think a lot of people are going to click that name, particularly now that he's in the top 7 after day 1. So that's what I'm thinking about up top. After that, right, it's really trying to find pivots. Like these guys up top, they're not unowned, right? These guys, especially in some of the higher dollar contests, are going to be closer to that 15 to 20% range. So I'm still trying to find pivots in this 8K. So I'm looking at a Sanjay M, right? He didn't have the best day. I'm willing to go out and tell that. Justin Rose, he shot -1, which is decent, right? He's going to get some attention, some respect from the field. But what I like here about Justin Rose is that he could not make a putt for his life today. It was all about the approach play for him, which is kind of bizarre world. If you know Justin Rose, he's typically one of the better putters that we have on the PGA Tour, right? He's not really known for being a ball striker. So if he can retain that ball striking ability, get back to his baseline of going out there and making a bunch of putts, I think you have a ceiling performance in him. So I like that at $9,100. Even though he did have a decent day in round 1. You got Denny McCarthy. I always like going after hot putters when it comes to Showdown. Let's see, Steven Yeager, right? +2. I know he can never have a good day after that, right? He's 8.4% owned. I'm definitely getting there. Let's see, Taylor Moore, another player that's just kind of playing decent at this point. I have to say, right, with all these sexy names around him that shot -3, right? -4 for Tom Hoagie, -1, -3 down here. Even guys like KH Lee above him, the Cam Davises, the Russell Henleys of the world are going to grab all the ownership, right? They're all going to be black holes for ownership there. And the guy left out might be a Taylor Moore, right? It might even be a Brian Harman. You can see I'm at 3.9%. I prefer Taylor Moore because he's an AM wave golfer, right? He's in what I think will be the nuts conditions out there tomorrow, and something that he should be able to take advantage of. Down here in the 7K range, I'm trying to avoid the chalk where I can, right? So Harris English after his -5, I'm probably staying away from that. Minwoo after his -3. Emiliano Grillo shot a 67 as well. All of those, I understand, all AM wave golfers, but there's just pivots you can take around them, right? So like a Kurt Kitayama, another AM wave golfer. He's half the ownership because he shot even par day 1. That was just about field average. I don't think we need to condemn the guy for going out there and having a field average day. So, Kurt Kitayama, I'm more than willing to get to. Hayden Buckley, right? I faded him for 4-round stuff. Did not have the best day today, and look at that. Just 8.9% ownership. So those are the kind of spots I'm looking to get to. A Bo Hostler, low ownership. JT Poston had a horrible day. Well, I'll go back to him, right? He's got to be aggressive to make the cut. You've got just a bunch of pivots that are usually AM wave golfers for me that I'm getting after. Even in Akshay, right? -1, very nondescript kind of day. Only 5.6% projected ownership. So, going into main slate, he was closer to 7%. He was one of the clearly chalkiest players in the slate. But now, because you had guys like Suh that are -2, right? The Putnams that are getting a lot of ownership, Ryan Fox as well. He's a lot more reasonable, right? If anything, he's like an average ownership in this sort of range. And especially given his birdie or better upside, I really like him for a Showdown kind of format. In the 6K range, I'm mixing and matching a bunch of different players like I was doing for the main slate. If you have any questions about specific players, feel free to go ahead and throw them down to chat. But I'm just trying to take high birdie percentage players. I mean, that's usually my strategy down low in Showdown. I usually scatter shot pretty wide down low in the Showdown kind of format, and take my stands up top, right? I'll play 25 to 35% of a lot of my guys in the 8K plus range. Down here, it's closer to 5 to 7%, right? I'm not going after 10% plus of these sort of players. So just to give you an idea there, my throat's killing me. Let's get some drink in me. Like a Luke List is like a perfect example, right? extremely high birdie percentage player, is capable of throwing a 73, a 74 out there, but is also capable of that 65 plus upside. So I like that. Adam Schenk, you want to avoid him. He's getting some ownership. But like Mark Hubbard, same price, also an AM Wave golfer, had a pretty decent day himself, right? Still shot -1, is only 2.4% owned. So for me, right, I'm trying to take the high upside golfers that aren't going to be super chalk out there. Let's see what we've got. Aaron Rye, Garrick Higo, pivots that I'm considering. We've got Jimmy Walker, another AM Wave golfer, right? He's been playing some pretty decent golf of late. I have to say, guys, Pearson Coody, I'm sure a lot of you got to see him today on the ESPN Plus coverage alongside Michael Block, who I have to say, guys, after I saw the interview where he was talking about how he was quote unquote world class, I lost all respect for him and started rooting against him hard. I mean, I was like celebrating every bad shot he hit. I don't know. It just seems like a massive douchebag. He was celebrating after making par putts today, like he was winning the U.S. Open or something. Anytime he did anything of note, the guy was acting like a complete clown out there. And I'm sure you saw on Twitter, a lot of people share that sentiment. So I have to say, the one bright spot of having that group as the feature group, right? All the sponsor exemptions, was to be able to see Pearson Coody, who's just ridiculously talented. Kid is an absolute stud. A little bit inconsistent, I have to say, right? He hits a few really bad shots every single round, but if he can clean that up, and he will at some point. I mean, you heard Smiley Kaufman talk about him today, said that he thinks he's a future top 5 player, future superstar at some point. I've said that before here on the channel. You hear a lot of people say that about Coody. If you weren't able to see him today and you have time off from work, or you're able to put it on the side to watch tomorrow, just keep an eye on that kid. You'll see what I'm talking about. First off, he's like 5'6" and he hits the ball 340. But his iron play is electric. Like he flushes the golf ball. It's remnants of like a Brooks Koepka kind of ball flight out there. And he's tiny, right? The kid's like 19, I think, maybe 20 years old at this point. He's just going to get bigger and stronger. It's just, he's going to be really good someday. So if you have a chance, I'd watch him tomorrow. That's my PSA to you. Kevin Kisner, I'm playing. He actually looked pretty good today. I have to say that, right? He ended up +4, not great, obviously, but hit a lot of good wedges. The putter was cooperating early. His round fell apart towards the mid or latter half. But if there's one sort of format I think he's perfect for right now, given kind of his stature, it would be Showdown, right? 18 holes, right? Where if you make a few bogeys, it's not the end of the world, right? You don't need him to hold up over 72 holes. And if Kevin Kisner gets really hot with the irons or really hot with the putter, he could do what he did over there at Pebble Beach. If you remember round 2 of Pebble, he shot like 7 under par. Like he hasn't done anything like that for a long time. Pebble, another short course. It was actually super windy that day. That was when it was like 35 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts. And he went out there and absolutely obliterated the golf course. So I remember that because I bet against him that day. His strokes line was like 72.5. And of course, I took the over considering the weather, and he went out there and fired like a 63. So he still has it in short spurts, right? So like I said, if there's a format to take him in, it's probably over here in Showdown. Outside of that, though, we went through some of the player pool there, right? I'm mixing in a lot of pivots. So when I'm building lineups, there's not much that has to be thought of, right? I'm just kind of mixing and matching my players because there's no real mega chalky guys that I have to navigate around. So it's part of the reason I play that way, right? It makes making lineups a lot simpler, but it goes further than that, right? It's taking advantage of the game theory aspect. And I think the best format to do that in is Showdown, just because of how volatile golf can be. A few notes. I am playing a few PM golfers, like a Jordan Spieth, for example, is in my player pool despite being a PM golfer. Same thing with Justin Rose, another guy in the wrong wave, but just considering how they played in round 1, I'm not avoiding them. Steven Yeager would be another one of those sort of players, but they're limited, right? There's a bazane hoot I'm taking in the PM wave, but especially the further down the board I go, the less and less likely I am to be using a PM wave golfer. So there's a few of these middle tier guys, especially that I'm taking. Jordan Spieth up top that I'm mixing in the PM wave. But when you have that built-in advantage, that's probably going to be right around a half a stroke advantage. You want to take, you want to exploit that advantage as much as humanly possible. So I guess that's the thought process there. We're going to go through a few lineups together, actually make a cash lineup, GBP lineup, that sort of fun stuff, and go through all your questions there too. So did I shared the wrong one. There we go. Good shit, Luke. Let's get over here to the right tab. And I need to check on the score of this Heat game. I bet on some overs for points 4 points for Jimmy Butler. Wow, you're going off, buddy, aren't you? 1 for 5 field goals. Gotta get it together, Jimmy Butler. You got 8 minutes though. You could do it. And then Jason Tatum is doing his thing. So okay. Miami Heat are getting spanked right now. Obviously, I'm a Heat fan, being from down here in South Florida. But let's get Jimmy Butler some points on the board. That would be pretty sweet. But let's go through this showdown stuff now. Get the basketball out of the way. Let's go through a cash lineup. So if I'm playing cash tomorrow, I think it's pretty simple, right? I think Scotty Scheffler, because he's in the PM wave, you don't have to play him. You can play him if you want to. I prefer to just jam in a bunch of guys from the AM. So, if I'm trying to jam in AM guys, I'm okay with taking some of the chalk here. Who would be the chalky AM golfer up top? I guess Homa, right? Because he shot -3. I would imagine that somebody like Finau, right, in cash would be a really good play. He's very consistent going off early. In this 8K range, not a bunch of AM golfers, but I suppose Cam Davis, right? It's a little bit expensive, but he could probably make it work in a cash lineup. And let's find one 6K golfer. I think the pricing this week is very favorable for the 6K range. There's a bunch of guys here that are more than doable. Let's find an AM wave. I guess you could go Shank if you wanted to, right? But my preferred player would actually be a Ben Griffin here. He's a very consistent player. I think he's way underpriced considering his pedigree compared to some of the other guys around him. He's AM wave golfer and he played well in round 1. So the things these players have in common, they're all AM wave golfers and they're all playing decently, right? I'm sure, Finau, right? I'm sure people wanted him to play better than he did there, T82. But it's not like he had a horrendous round, right? I'm not going to somebody that, I don't know, there's not even really an example up top of somebody that had a horrendous round, but a JT Poston, right? I would not play in a cash kind of lineup. You, of course, are not playing Michael Block, who's a world class with the emphasis on ass. You wouldn't be playing him out there in a cash lineup, right? So, yeah, you want to stick to guys that had at least a decent round, mostly guys towards the top of the board. And the ones that are in the ideal conditions are what I would try to do for cash tomorrow. I don't think you have to, but there's an edge to be had there. And in cash, especially where the median projection matters, I think you would be a fool not to play those guys. In terms of a single entry GPPs, right, this is where we open it up, right? We're not all about the median projection here. This is where, I mix in guys like a Jordan Spieth, right? Talked about it before. I think because he's a PM wave, he had a horrible round 1, that he's going to be a true pivot up top, right? If you start with Jordan Spieth, you're going to be different from a lot of the other field, right? Especially the hardcore DFS fans. A lot of them are going to AM wave stack, right? They're going to play the guys that are in the most receptive greens, right? They can go out there and throw darts early in the morning. There's an advantage to that, but when we're in a large field contest, there's also an advantage to playing against what everyone else is going to go after. So let's put Jordan in there as a second man in. Let's put McCarthy. I really like his chances in the morning. Let's throw in Taylor Moore, another AM wave golfer that I really like his chances out there. And we could probably throw another 8K guy in here. Let's throw Jaeger in there, right? So you can see there's 2 AM wave golfers and then 2 PM wave golfers in this lineup. I have no issues with starting like that. Let's see. Let's throw Bazane in there too, right? Another PM wave guy that you can throw in that's going to be relatively low owned and has more than enough chance to go out there and succeed, right? When we're talking about the differential between the 2 waves, it was 0.73 shots between the 2 waves. A 0.73 shot difference is 1 birdie, right? You can make that up on 1 hole. So these, players that I think are too cheap, like a Bazane, like a Jaeger, that are now going to be low owned because they're in the PM wave, I think are exceptional GPP plays. So the reason why I wanted to show that from the GPP perspective is, in cash, right, stack the AM wave. If you're in a single entry, I think you might even want to stack the AM wave. But in GPPs, I do think you're going to get slightly lower ownership on some of these players, which in those kind of contests, right, when you're looking for that top end performance, it makes them a better play. It just does per the numbers, right? When you have lower ownership on them, when you're trying to win first place, there's a ton of utility on taking those low owned players. Outside of that, I guess in single entries, if you really wanted to play a piece of chalk like Scotty Scheffler, you could easily get away with it, right? You just have to add in maybe 1 or 2 pivots. So if I was playing a Scotty, I really think somebody like Denny McCarthy's a great little pivot to add in there. One of these PM wave golfers, let's say Bazane would fit that kind of description, would be a good guy to kind of throw in there and get some differentiation. Let's see, maybe 1 more pivot, honestly. And it doesn't have to be crazy like a JT Poston, right? By pivot, maybe somebody that's like 1 or 2 over par. So let's find one. Riley, I think, is PM Wave, so that's not great. Same thing with McNeely. Scott Stallings, right? He's an AM Wave golfer. He's 1 over par at this point. You've got Scotty, right? Relatively chalky player. And then at least 3 guys I would consider as pivots. So for your last 2, right, if you even wanted to take some chalk here, whatever, right? You have enough pivots in that lineup at this point. So let's see, like an English, right? He's an AM Wave guy. Might want to take him even though he's a little bit chalky at $7,300. Let's say you're in love with an Andrew Putnam tomorrow, right? An AM Wave golfer that played well today. You could do that in a single entry because you mixed in pivots like a McCarthy, Bazane, Hooten, Stalling. So that's what I'll say about single entry. I know I get asked all the time about ownership in my single entry lineups. My opinion on it is that as long as you have 1 or 2 extreme pivots in your lineup, it really doesn't matter who you have in the other 4 spots. Now, there might be an extreme example like for Sunday Showdown where you don't want to take just like 1 through 4 in the leaderboard, for example. But for like rounds 2 and 3 Showdown, that would certainly be the case. Let's catch up on any questions down in chat, and then let's talk through some props. Michael Block going to 81.80 would not surprise me, that's for sure. You feel like this is shaping up to be a putting contest. Kind of looks like it right now, right? If you take a look at the leaderboard, it's a lot of good putters. Harry Hall, English, fantastic putters. I mean, even Hoagie's a decent putter, right? He's not fantastic, but let's look at that. Putnam, Shank, guys like Robbie, Sean, Homa made a bunch of long putts today, so I guess you could say he kind of luck-sacked it with the putter out there. Burns, definitely a good putter. But then you've got like Scotty Scheffler, who was neutral with the putter today, did not gain a bunch of strokes on the greens, and shot -3, right? Shot 67. So first off, that should intimidate the rest of the field, because imagine when this guy goes out there and gains 1, even just 2 strokes to the field putting. I mean, it's going to be at least a 65, right? If not better than that. So I think the field needs to watch out for Scotty. He's on the prowl there, but yeah, mostly putting contest, right? Especially for Harry Hall. He gained a bunch of strokes with the irons today, but also gained like the last time I checked, it was 3.7 strokes putting, and he had a few holes left. So I'm sure he added to that with how good of a putter he is. CB says, pick one, Taylor, Hostler, or Poston. So Nick Taylor, I'm assuming. Bo Hostler, JT Poston. If you're a madman and you really need leverage, let's say the rest of your lineup's super chalky, then there's utility in taking JT Poston. Right? You're just really trying to change things up. Where is he on the pricing? I know he's not that cheap. Where are you at, JT? Oh, you're right there. $7,400. Like, the argument for playing JT Poston is that he's one of the lower owned players in this range, right? And long term, I don't want to say that he's one of the best players in this range, but he belongs, right? He belongs in this range. So he's a fair priced guy that's low owned. The other 2 players make a lot more sense, right? Let's see. Nick Taylor, Bo Hostler at least played okay here for round 1. Let's see. Nick Taylor +1, Bo Hostler shot +2. Both of them are relatively low owned. If I had to choose, it'd be Bo Hostler, just because I really think he can get hot with the putter, and in Showdown, it's an easy way to a ceiling performance. So I would go Bo Hostler, but I like all 3. Poston, especially if you need leverage. What's going on, Antonio? Is Im broken? No idea. I didn't play that bad today. Like +2. I'm going to say it's not that bad. Let me bring up his shots gained. Let's see how he did it, because at least for what I know his approach play was a little bit off. Wouldn't surprise me if he lost on approach. I just want to make sure he wasn't hemorrhaging on approach. So I'm definitely backing him tomorrow for a bounce back. And I don't want to see horrible approach stats. Maybe bring this up, but we'll have to see. Where you at, Sung Bae? There you are, +2. All right, so in round 1, he gained putting, gained off the tee, gained around the green, and lost 3 strokes on approach. That's hemorrhaging. That's what I didn't want to see. He's 117th in the field. I have a hard time thinking that's going to happen again, to be quite frank with you guys. I have a really hard time thinking that he's going to go out there and lose 3 strokes again. I can tell you that on this par 3, he lost at least a stroke because he hit one in the water. He had another ball in the water. What was it? 16, right? He also had another shot in the water here on this par 3, lost at least a stroke to the field on that iron shot as well. And then with his recovery shot, hit it to like 2 inches. So this 3 strokes lost, I have to say, I think it's just like misleading. I think his whole round in general is misleading, because that's like 3 to 4 shots right there, right, that he had hitting the ball in the water and par threes, and the water wasn't even in play. Like, this pin was far enough in that like no one was hitting in the water. It was probably only like 5 shots all day that ended up in the agua. And then over here in hole 16, he was the only player that hit it in the water. So I kind of think it was just a fluke round. Like, this 3 shots he lost was just because he hit 2 horrible shots that he's probably not going to hit again. So honestly, I think it's a good bounce back spot. Thoughts on the top of the leaderboard? A lot of bombers, a lot of short players. Which guy do you prefer? You know, going into the week, I was much more about the accuracy first kind of players. Really, I just want high upside players, right? At least for Showdown, right? If you're talking about for like outright bets, that sort of thing, I'm still definitely favoring the more accurate players. I think just they can keep themselves in play. They can avoid some of the big numbers. They're going to be able to set up a lot of birdie looks by being accurate off the tee. But for Showdown, I don't know if I care as much, right? I'm more just looking for upside at low ownership, right? So whether you're a bomber, you're a shorter player, I'm okay with both of those kind of avenues. So good question, I have to say. Kind of felt like Minwoo played bad today, but he's -3. If he gets his iron fixed, it'll be -6. Yeah, let's take a look at his shots gained. It's not a bad idea. He was in the featured group. He drove the ball beautifully. They were focusing on that quite a bit. And let's just see what the stats say, right? So for round 1, he lost on approach, lost around the green, and gained putting. I worry about the putting because he's not a very consistent putter. So the fact that he was top 10 in the field in putting, the off the tee is going to stay there. But if tomorrow, let's say he's just an average putter, which for him would actually be a pretty good day, you know, he's going to have to really gain with the irons to go out there and I think even shoot -3 again. So yeah, he's not my favorite play just because he's not that really consistent, explosive putter. Like if this was a Denny McCarthy that had gained 2.6 strokes putting today, or let's say like a Christian Bezainhout in that same situation, I'd have no problem with it. But Minwoo Lee, he's not really known for that. Out of Colin, Im, Finau, who do you think bounces back? I think Im definitely does. Colin looked a little bit broken, but a lot of that was just the putter, and he can be a little bit hot and cold with that. So I think the first 2 can definitely bounce back. Finau, a little bit more perplexing for me because Finau played horribly last week at Oak Hill. So it's not just the fact that he played, pretty poorly today. Let's take a look at the shots gained there too. It's very, very helpful when we're looking at this. It lost 2 strokes on approach. That's worrisome to me. This losing with the putter is kind of on brand. Not that worried about that with Tony Finau. It's this losing with the approach play. I'm giving him a shot. I'm definitely going out there playing him for my DFS lineups, but it's not ideal, right? Unlike a Sungjae Im, he doesn't really have the water ball excuse, right? 16, he didn't hit it in the water. Didn't hit it in the water at 13. Let's see. I don't think he has any penalty strokes with his approach play. He doesn't, right? So unlike a Sungjae Im, right, there's no excuse to be had here, right? It's poor iron play for pretty much the entire round, which I would argue is a lot more worrisome than Sungjae Im going out there and hitting 2 water balls, right? That's just 2 bad shots. Whereas Tony Finau pretty much hit a bad shot on every single hole with his iron play. That would differentiate them. Only golfers you're mad at is Fleetwood and Morikawa. They messed up our parlays. Yeah, hey, I have to say though, Wesley, I don't really hold that many grudges against players. Like, at the end of the day, we're the ones that are placing the bets. Like we could have taken their, overs or unders instead. So I try to think of it that way. And also like golf's hard, right? I play all the time. I'm a low handicap player and I still shoot 80, 90 from time to time. Like it's just is what it is. That's golf. Even the best players out there are going to have really bad days. So yeah, definitely at first I had the same kind of mindset, right? It's tilting. It's kind of like why we sweat bets, right? We get into it for sure. But I've definitely started to cut them a little bit more slack over the years for sure. Can I look at English's round? Yeah, he was all putting and around the green. At least that's from what I saw in the highlights. I have to think that it was. Yeah, putting around the green. He was decent ball striking. I mean, he was pretty average across the board. I have to say, when English is playing well, that's what he does. He gains across all 4 stat categories. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to be chalky. I'm avoiding him in DFS, but that's a favorable stat shots gained profile. That's not something you should be worried about. Let's take a look at these prop boards. So if you have DFS questions, I'll still answer them down in chat. But what I want to focus on here now is the prop boards. And there's a few slips I already have in, which I'll show you guys. But I want to go ahead and refresh our screen here, see what we've got for some of these projections. Let me go ahead, stop sharing my screen, make sure I can bring up all of them together. There we go. All right, let's bring it back up now. And we're also going to talk through some live stuff. So, obviously for DFS, if you're playing live, I'm not going to cover that, but we're going to go through some prop stuff for live after we go through the PGA stuff here too. So these are the weather forecasts for tomorrow. I wouldn't say there's not really a consensus going on here, which has me a little bit worried, is some of the forecasts are calling for higher winds than others, right? This GFS up here is pretty high winds the entire day, and these are sustained winds. These are not your wind gusts, right? So 7 to 10 miles an hour of sustained winds. And these are actually, I have to say, it's not knots. These are actually, it's not miles an hour. These are knots. So you have to multiply these by like 1.1, 1.2. So it's like 12 miles an hour of sustained wind. That's pretty nasty. Even this ECM model, it's calling for like 10 miles an hour of sustained winds, like 8, 9 miles an hour for this Icon one. The NAM, and then the one that I find the most accurate is this triple R down here, are the ones that I've heard, a lot of meteorologists kind of tout. They're calling for lower winds. So these other models, the ones that are quote unquote less accurate, are the ones calling for higher winds. And then the ones down here that are quote unquote more accurate are calling for lower winds. So we've got to ask ourselves which ones we think are the most accurate. Personally, I'm siding towards the bottom ones, especially in the morning, right? It tends to be less windy than the afternoon. So I'm betting on there being slightly better conditions for the morning guys than the afternoon, but it's still going to play difficult, right? We talked about how this course is going to firm up over the weekend. It's going to get slightly harder to hit greens, hold greens. The greens are going to get faster, harder to putt as the week goes on. We want to be careful with taking these props. So the props that I already have in, I have the Tony Finau under in already. And then I have a Sungjae, but it was at 69 strokes. So I probably wouldn't take it at 68.5. I would probably take his over 3.5 birdies as a replacement at this point. But the reason why I was immediately, drawn to these two is because of the morning wave golfers, right? They're both teeing off at 9:15 a.m. They're going to have the better conditions out of the two waves. And they need to be aggressive. They've got to shoot under par to go out there and make the cut, or at least to get back into this golf tournament. So I like the push equity with somebody like Finau at 69. I like the same thing with Sungjae that was also at 69 strokes. But at 3.5 birdies, I mean, that was the average to the field today when it came to birdies. So I know it'll be more difficult, but Sungjae's an elite tier player, right? He makes birdies in bunches. You don't have an issue with getting to him at that number as a replacement. But these PM golfers, and there's a lot of them on here, right? Like Justin Rose, Fleetwood. Let's see, Chris Kirk, Siwoo Kim, for example. I'm not as bullish at taking their props, right? They're at like 69 strokes, and I think that's fair. They're going to be in slightly harder conditions. It'll be windier. The greens will be a little bit crunchier than what they were for the morning wave. So I think if we're going to take props here, we want to take guys that are playing early. The only PM wave golfer I have to say that I did consider was, of course, Jordan Spieth, but that's because he's my boy. So just for full transparency, it's not because I think he's a fantastic play. Let's see. So we got Tony Finau at 3.5 birdies. I have to say, too, I think the 3.5 birdies is not a bad line. Maybe as a replacement to the 69 strokes. And then 67.5, I wouldn't touch this prop, for an over or an under for Scotty. I think that's a fair projection. Today, right, as an AM wave golfer, I thought the under had a lot of value. But tomorrow, now that he's in the slightly harder wave, don't know if I like it as much. Just it feels like the projection's pretty spot on. So, this Michael Block over we might have to take. I was looking at that earlier. The 6.5 bogeys line, like that would actually be an under, but this 64.5 strokes, he's gonna make some doubles out there tomorrow. He did today, that's for damn sure. So let's put that one in the shopping cart. Let's look at chat for some questions. And no questions for right now. It's all right. If you have any questions, let me know about props. Obviously, any props that you're considering taking yourself. But let me know your favorite prop over here in Underdog, because I'm trying to find a pair for this Michael Block one. A few that I'm considering, like the Jordan Spieth prop, I told you guys either 3.5 birdies or 69 strokes. The one I'm siding towards right now. But maybe the chat has something cooked up. And these over for bogeys in the afternoon, I'm not adverse to taking them, because like 2 bogeys for like a Ricky Fowler, I love Ricky. I think he's going to have a great tournament, but he'll be in some crunchy greens, super late tee time, and he's at 2 bogeys. A lot of push equity involved with somebody at 2 bogeys. So we'll leave those 2 in the shopping cart right now. Maybe we'll throw this Spieth one in there too. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Let's go over here to prize picks. Oh, look, they bumped one of the props I was going to show you. Great. Could have guessed that. But yeah, they had Denny McCarthy at 3 birdies. Now he's at 3.5. Never mind. No interest there. But the main prop I'm liking right now is this Hovland over birdies are better. He's a morning wave golfer. He's at 4 birdies over here on Underdog. So that stuck out to me immediately. And he's, kind of spun his wheels, right? He's not in contention right now and needs to take this place low. I don't hate like a Tony Finau over he's also at 3.5. Right? I mentioned that before. They have Max Homa at 4 over there. He's over here at 3 on prize picks. So let's go ahead and just put those over there. Just, take advantage of the differences between the two sites. 3.5 birdies makes sense for most of these players. And they bumped like all the guys at 3 to 3.5. So that's unfortunate. They do have Bazanhoud at 3. They do have Harmon at 3 birdies, but they're PM wave golfers, right? The whole reason I really liked this McCarthy over when he was at 3 birdies was because he has an 8:31 a.m. tee time. So it's kind of unfortunate. Let's take a look at strokes. This is the reason why I like this Michael Block over. He's at, did they take him? Oh, there he is. High for me in there in the bottom right. It's at 76.5 strokes, right? So that's an entire 2-stroke difference between the two sites. I just got to figure out which one of these two props I'm taking, right? Ricky Fowler or Jordan Spieth. Will Nuka slip on here for the stream, but we'll have to figure that out. They just added greens. They just added fairways. Let's take a look at these. Very similar to round 1. Almost identical board, I'd say, actually. So it's worth noting. Same thing for fairways. They must have made a killing on that today. That's what that means to me, right? If they got killed today, they definitely would have adjusted for their greens and fairways board, and nothing changed. I didn't bet any myself other than the under for Harris English fairways, and no differences here. Looks the exact same. In fact, they have Harris English at the same number there too. Interesting. And then for pars or better, almost the identical board to yesterday. Yep, the course isn't even going to change that much. I tend to agree with how they're projecting this for tomorrow, but some value to be had, especially with like these 2 birdie lines. If you look at their strokes lines, right, they're 1.5 under par piece. Homa's 68.5. Same thing there for Victor Hovland. I would take their birdie or better props just because they're in the morning conditions. They'll be able to throw those darts. I think it's slightly lower risk. There are double bogeys to be had around this golf course. There's water in play as well. And anytime I can choose between a strokes prop and a birdie prop, and I think their chances of hitting are relatively similar, which would be the case between the two situations here. I'm always going to side with the birdie prop just because a double, triple bogey can't just completely screw them, which if you took Sanjay M strokes today, you got completely screwed by him going out there and triple bogeying a hole. Colin Morikawa ended up triple bogeying hole number 9. Like his strokes prop got screwed by just one hole. That can't happen with the birdie or better prop, right? So that's why I slightly prefer that. Yeah, 2 bogeys, Fowler over. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So they have him at 3.5 on Underdog, or you're saying on prize picks, right? Yeah, if they had him on Underdog, I'd probably take it. Yeah, Spieth's probably the most risky there, right? All right, well, we'll save Spieth for another slip. So I'm going to enter this Michael Block over, also this Ricky Fowler over at 2 bogeys. I hate to do it, Rick, right? He's one of my favorite players out there, but you got to do it, right? When there's value to be had out there. It's just, that's the case. Let's look at the par or better props. Do they even have Ricky up here? They do, right? He's at 2.5 bogeys up here. So there's value there, that we can attack. They have a bunch of these other guys at 2.5. Car outside was revving its engine real loud. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see. Does No House Advantage have a board out yet? It looks like they do. Because I saw the little PGA over here. They do. Look at that. All these sites are on the ball today. I love it. Looks the same as prize picks. Who could have guessed? Who could have guessed they post the same board, right? They've only done it every time. Birdie or better. Same numbers. Love that. Homa over. Where's that Hovland over? Hovland over. Can I even enter props in here, or am I still limited? I feel like I am. Oh, it worked. Nice. Wasn't expecting it to work, boys. I thought I was going to be limited on there, but I guess not. So sweet. In terms of other props, And by the way, the thing I can't enter these two props over here on Prize Picks because I'm limited. So like if I went to try and do so, right, it says max winnings on a single pick is over under 1,000. They have it glitched out. I don't know why they have it like that. I have to wait till midnight to enter on Prize Picks. It's annoying to say the least. Let's check on this game over here with the Heat. Jimmy Butler is 8 points at halftime. What a scrub. He has less points than Duncan Robinson. And Jason Tatum, of all people, scored 0 points since I touted him as having a great game. And all these other guys have like 13 to 15 points. Oh, boy. We're going to reverse sweep the NBA picks today. That's great. Huge surprise, I have to say. Huge surprise. Can't tell I'm horrible at NBA picks. So in terms of what we're looking here in Prize Picks, I like these two overs for birdies or better. But outside of that, I think it's the board is decently priced. Like it's going to play pretty difficult tomorrow. These players are definitely better than your average, but there's not like the whole board's under. That's not like that's a board where I'm like, oh, you can pretty much take any under for strokes and hammer it. You know, if you're going to bet anything towards the bottom of the board here, I mean, there's unders I like, there's overs I like, right? A lot of it comes down to the shots gained in round one. There's somebody that hit the ball beautifully, didn't gain a bunch of strokes with the putter, then they're probably somebody I'd look to go out there and maintain that momentum for round two. But if they luck sacked it round one, right, that might be a solid spot to look for a fade. So I would say just like without looking into the stats, without actually running my projections and looking at some of the bigger discrepancies, you know, I think the best props that I have my eye on would be these birdies or better props. I just think they're the safest. Like even these PM wave golfers at 3, not the worst idea. Like Brian Harmon, I know he's not the best birdie maker, but he plays these kind of tracks really well, the shorter kind of tracks. You know, there's not a bunch of AM wave guys on the board down here, but you do have like Cam Davis at 3.5. Like he makes a ton of birdies. Like I know I'm fading him in DFS. It would not surprise me for him to go well over this birdie mark, though. I wish they didn't bump that. That Denny McCarthy at 3 prop was absolute money. So you have Sanjay at 3.5, like all these elite tier players we were talking about before, just mixing and matching them. Like you've got Homa there. If you've got Morikawa, I would probably consider the over for there too. All of these sort of players that can throw darts in the morning. I mean, it's going to be a difficult day out there, but if anyone's going to make 4 birdies, it's these elite tier guys, right? And particularly the ones that are going to be out there in the best conditions. So we'll have to see. I'm going to go through the stats later. I might avoid Tony Finau, right? He had a really bad approach day. So I think if there's any one of those guys up top to avoid, I guess maybe it's Tony. I took him for strokes, but like Max Homa at 3.5 seems like a really damn good prop. Victor, I know for a fact I'm going to love for tomorrow. Colin, not that bad. And I'm probably still going to throw in this Tony Finau prop, but I would probably rank them in that kind of order there. Let's see. Did Prize Picks limit you because you were winning too much? Yeah, they did. No House Advantage did too. So I guess let's just test it. The other day I was limited over here on No House Advantage. Maybe I'm not anymore. Who knows, right? We can test it. Let's put in the Hovland over. I really like the Hovland over for birdies, like I was saying. And I guess we'll just throw in the Homa one, right? I like that one there too. It says my max is 100, so maybe they did remove it. I mean, they'd be smart too. I was bringing a lot of action to their site. Nope. See that right there? It says you have reached your daily versus the house limit. I can only bet, I think, $50 a day on PGA. It's pretty crazy. So they have me limited. Like over here, right? Like if I wanted to enter the slip, I can't, right? I don't know if you can see it up there in the top right. It says max winnings on a single pick or over under 1,000. I literally have to wait until midnight. So that's the main reason I like Underdog over here is they don't limit me like that. They're much more reasonable, I'd say, when it comes to some of their props. Like they may bump stuff. They may take stuff off the board. That's kind of annoying, but at least they don't limit me to like $5 bets. Let's see. Did they post any halftime bets? They did. Am I about to hedge myself out here? It's like already looking like a blowout. Like, do we take unders on points for these guys? He's at 13 points. I guess they're kind of pricing it, like keeping in mind that there might be this blowout going on, right? They have his points line way lower than it honestly should be. Oh, or do I double down? and take their lower lines and just hope they have a good second half. That's honestly not the worst idea, because like there's a lot of value now. Like their lines are 13 points apiece. Oh, somebody talked me off the ledge. I am so close to nuking this right now. You have to realize a lot of it's because of the bet I've already placed. What can you see the cut line being? I think it would be +1. Have to deal with these daily restrictions all the time. Yeah, honestly, they're scams, right? They're able to make all the money they want off people, but no one else can win money off them, I guess. All these gambling sites are pathetic. Yeah, they don't even try to hide it. If no one talks me off this, I'm just doing it. All right. When I said I was nuking it, I wasn't kidding. I don't know if you saw how much I put on that. I'm not kidding. So let's hope that this game stays close. Let's hope that Tatum and Butler end up going out there and putting on a masterclass. Because wrong prop down there. This one I entered earlier, not hidden. Let's just say that this Tatum Butler prop for the overs on those, probably not getting there. If they end up getting there too, right? If it ends up going to like overtime, something like that, so be it. But I'm not counting on it. So we'll have to see. But until next time, guys, best of luck. Save it for game 6. Stay away, bro. Jimmy's cooked. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's more of like, I think the value on those were there because their second half numbers were like 3-4 points lower than their second half lines. It's a 17-point game. All it has to happen is there has to be a run for the Heat, right? Let's say like a 6-7 point run, and they're going to play at least 80-90% of their second half minutes. Like they're going to play most of the game. And if that's the case and their lines are at like those kind of lines, like they should be plus EV for the over. That's what I was thinking. I might be wrong. You guys are telling me to stay away. But you say NBA wants Boston to win it. Yeah, but they want it to be interesting, right? So maybe it won't be the blowout. I just need it to not be a blowout. I think that's the thing, right? I need it to be somewhat close, and I think that it's at least a fair line. But hey, you guys warned me. Hey, if it doesn't hit, you guys told me so. I should have listened. So until next time, guys, best of luck. Hopefully we can cash out here for Friday. Already a bunch of slips in. Already have some showdown lineups in myself. So best of luck with all of your exposure out there. We're doing the same things for rounds 3 and 4. So make sure to catch me live on here as well. Smash the like button if you haven't already. And let's bring home a GPP, fellas.